trying harder and harder and harder works until it doesn't, until you break. So you have to find a way of being able to survive and relax when things are bad, rather than pushing harder, so that the tension that you're feeling reduces, and therefore you can continue to flow more rather than keep pushing under tension.
Lend me your ears.
This nation will rise up.
Welcome to the Elemental Health Podcast. Welcome back to the Elemental Health Podcast. My name's Nick Quinton. I am your host, and as always, I have got an amazing guest for you this week. We have got an expert in the field of strength coaching, a guy I look to as a kind of mentor and friend in the strength space, and a guy that is just basically a badass as far as I'm concerned. But at the same time, he's a straight-talking, no-nonsense northern lad, which is, if you're not from the UK, you probably won't know what that means. But you'll see as we get into the nitty-gritty, very direct, very straight-talking, and has been in the game for a long, long time, and has really got a very deep, developed understanding about what's required to get strong, stay strong as you get older, and build strength. Those are probably the key things that I think to with this guy. And also he's kind of pushing the limits of what a lot of people will call functional fitness, and looking at some of the tools and some of the interesting and creative ways to maintain strength. Without further ado, guys, this week we have got the amazing Matt Shaw, and we have a wide-ranging conversation, and we look at some of the successes and failures in his life, and how he's built this resilient, strong body and continues to develop and improve and build in the coaching space, and lots of tools and tactics for you guys to take away, because I know that's what you like. Thank you very much for listening in. Thank you very much for supporting the podcast. 2021 for me is about energy and mobility. If you're interested in those things, then you can go to elementalhealth.co, and find out more about the free challenge that I'm running this year, and get involved and learn more about my coaching. Without further ado, here is the legendary Matt Shaw. Matt Shaw, welcome to the Elemental Health Podcast. The audience has had a little bit of an insight into your background, but I look at you as someone, the go-to guy, whether it be on social media or to have a chat with when it comes to strength training, but more than that, kind of this notion of functional training that everyone's got in their heads, become quite a popular phrase more recently. I see you really kind of breaking barriers in that space, and also utilizing some of the tools that not only look pretty cool, but I see as putting together the different components of strength that maybe leaving behind some of the traditional dogmas that we've got. So I don't know where to start. I've also, the mountaineer experience I'd love to chat to you about as well. So I guess let's start by just hearing kind of where you are at the moment in terms of your coaching, and what's exciting for you at the moment, and what things look like.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Nick. Appreciate that. So I mean, what's going on for me right now? Well, I work with a range of different clients in a range of different ways. And one of the things that excites me the most is literally the fact that I work with such a diverse range of people that my work never gets boring. And it varies from, people who want to, maybe lose a few pounds right the way through to elite level athletes, to people who want to compete and do things, do special events like the fan dance. It's just a massively varied approach, and also direction as well, with everything that's happened this year. I see people one-to-one, both face-to-face, but also more time in recent times online through Zoom. I also work with coaches remote programming as well, online webinars, face-to-face workshops, courses. So I've got lots of plates that I'm kind of spinning, which I really enjoy, because that variety is the kind of thing that excites me and stops anything getting too tedious,
And Okay, mate. Yeah, loads you said in there that I'd love to unpack, especially from what you think's going on in the industry perspective, and maybe we'll get to that. But I think so. The fundamentally, sorry, I'm some lighting issues here. The fundamentally, what's how do you see yourself in terms of your own personal training? Because I know you like to be kind of fit, as I do, fit and primed for what life might have to throw at you. And in your case, it might be climbing, a 6,000, 7,000 meter peak, also lifting heavy and all the other components. So what are your kind of fundamentals, your non-negotiables when it comes to staying in good condition and being ready for whatever you might want to jump into?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, Nick, I've always been involved in physical training. I've been an athlete all of my life from, when I was a kid as a competitive swimmer, right the way through the multitude of sports that I've done over the years to, to pretty high levels. So really for me, the non-negotiable is that I know that training forms a fundamental part of my life, that if it isn't there, then I don't feel or operate as well as I can. And I was having a chat with a client of mine today about this idea of, not really feeling like training. And more often than not, that quite often is me, is yes, I'm a coach. Yes, I'm a performance coach. Yes, I'm a personal trainer. Yes, I'm an athlete. Doesn't mean I always feel like tearing it up in the gym. 9 times out of 10, I'm a dad. My son doesn't live with me, but I have him a fair bit. I've got a busy business. I train a lot. I support a lot of people. My lifestyle is a hectic one. But I know that fundamentally the training is something that I make the time for, because even though I might not, at the time particularly want to do it or have the energy to do it, what I focus on the most is what it's going to give me, which is once the session is complete or once the sessions over time are complete. But in terms of, what I aim for is I'm very much, I listen to my gut a lot, and I listen to what I feel drawn to. And that tends to be things like, the Aconcagua experience. Earlier in the year, it was trying to improve my time on the ski erg for a 7K because I was locked down, and that's what the kit I had available. Just recently, the last 4 weeks, I've taken on the fact that I wanted to see how much body fat I could lose in the last 4 weeks going into Christmas to see what I could achieve. I always have something that I'm working towards, and that's the thing that keeps me ultimately showing up. But the crux of it all really is for me to be as healthy, fit, strong, all-round conditioned, as long as possible, pain-free, going as far into my life as I can. I'm 46 now, and I'm in some of the best shape I've ever been in. And that's because I kind of listen to my body and train based upon how I'm feeling and what I want to do.
Yeah, man, and that's my ethos as well. I think I'm 41 now, and I think this hasn't been the pinnacle of my health and fitness. I'm still moving forward, and I'm still taking massive bounds, and I'm of that ethos, and that's when I'm chatting to guys. So, what paradigms need to change, do you think, for people to get that understanding that they can continue to get stronger, continue to get fitter into their 40s versus, because I think a lot of guys I speak to, and I try to talk to this when I'm kind of getting new guys in and stuff, is this notion that people tend to, I don't know the conversations you might have, but the conversations I often have is people come in and say, oh yeah, well, I used to play rugby, I used to play football in my 20s and I was quite fit, blah blah blah, I just want to kind of lose a bit of fat and get in better shape. And for me, that's kind of like, well, first, it's not very aspirational. You're not really seeking out something that's going to keep you motivated and keep you kind of pounding forwards. But more importantly, I don't actually think this often isn't the case. I think the notion of what they were in their 20s, and I speak from my personal experience as well. I was playing a lot of rugby, but I wasn't that fit. I wasn't as strong as I am now. Yeah. And then things have got worse. So there's a bit of mental kind of unwinding to be done there. So what needs to change in people's kind of idea of who they are, and what was your kind of a process of understanding that you could continue to get fitter and stronger? Has that always been the case for you?
I always look at it, Nick, as just a process of trying to do the best that you can do and the best that you can be. And it's not always about pushing forward. My first attempt on Aconcagua, when I almost didn't make it off the mountain, when I came back from that, for a few months, I felt fine. Afterwards, the repercussions of almost dying and how deep I had to dig and do in terms of doing that, my body was absolutely racked with pain. I'd been trying to pick up my training to train for the summer fan dance once I got back from Aconcagua. Did that for a few months, and my body was just by the May, my body would every day I'd wake up, my knees hurt, my back hurt, my hips hurt. I'd lost range of motion in my hips. I was tired all the time. I didn't want to train. And I recognized that as the fact that I hadn't given myself the time when I came back from Aconcagua to ultimately rest and recover. So in doing that, I just let go of the idea of pushing on for the fan dance, took myself out of the race, let go of that, and just focused on doing very light mace work and just trying to basically heal myself. So the goal ultimately was one that I had to abandon. And I think sometimes as trainers, we can be focused on this idea that our clients have to have goals. But actually, sometimes a client doesn't even know what the hell they want. They just know that they want to feel a bit better in some way. And so what I like to do, or my mindset in terms of that is, well, okay, if somebody doesn't know what we want to do, we want to just keep training fun and interesting. So they've got the motivation to want to be able to turn up regularly to do that session or those sessions, and then something will emerge from there. So if somebody might decide that they start to really enjoy doing squats, and hey, why don't I want to see what performance goal I can do with a squat. Or you might get somebody who starts to do a bit of running, starts to feel pretty good, and then they're like, actually I feel like doing like a 10k or a half marathon. The plan emerges without trying to shoehorn somebody into a plan, and it just comes about from conversations. And sometimes I'm a big believer in the idea that if we don't know where we're going in life and we're at a point of crossroads, sometimes all we need to do is just stand still and be patient for a while and wait for the right way to emerge. And I think one of the biggest problems in the industry is people talk about being goal driven all the time. And actually, not everybody needs a goal. Some people, the goal can be just turning up a little bit every day. Even if it's doing like a non-negotiable of 10 kettlebell swings once a day, every day. Well, if somebody's not been doing any kettlebell swings at all, and they manage to stack that together for a couple of months, all of a sudden that's a load of kettlebell swings there that they've gotten done, which they wouldn't normally do. Therefore, they've progressed. Therefore, there's a goal that somebody can work towards, no matter how busy your life is. There's always something that can be done, even if it seems like it's the tiniest thing ever. Is if you've not been doing it and you start doing something further down the line, all of those things that you've been doing are going to add up. And that's the biggest thing, I think, is the conversations and relationships you have with your clients, and not trying to shoehorn them into where you think they should go, and letting it kind of develop organically through the conversations that you have without trying to push them into, let's work on this. Invariably, the right way will emerge. If somebody doesn't know what they want to do at the outset, it will just come through the process of them feeling fitter and training.
Yeah. And so do you see having that support of a coach or someone there to support you through that process is vital then?
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, it can be, I think the thing is sometimes you might get a client who comes to you that they have an idea that this is what they think they want to do. But if you begin to then ask certain questions about why they want to achieve that and unpick it, you might be able to see that maybe they're trying to prove themselves in some way. Well, maybe that goal then isn't the best one to move forward with. If they've got that psychological need to prove, maybe it's better to kind of look underneath that and start to unpick that. And quite often what would happen is somebody might go along a road trying to achieve a particular goal and always fall short. Well, maybe they're falling short because they're doing the goal for the wrong reason. They're trying to get recognition or some kind of self-acceptance or whatever it is, and searching for a goal, when actually the answers don't lie in the external thing. It involves some introspection and doing some internal work on being okay with where you're at and where you're going, instead of attaching an outcome to a particular goal and thinking, once I've got there, everything's going to feel great. Chances are you'll get there and nothing changes. And I've been through that process myself, which is why I understand it.
Yeah, I think, and that speaks to kind of the coaching cycle, really, isn't it? I think you've got to really understand yourself really well before you can go out and kind of help people. And I've been there, and that having that intrinsic nature of what you're seeking out is absolutely vital. And all the people that I've coached, I don't think anyone's made good progress without that intrinsic kind of understanding of their own identity and where they want to take it to, and what it means to them, and get that grounded first. Dan John talks about this A-B concept. You need to know, obviously, B, where you're going to. That needs to be clear. Lots of people don't really understand that, which you touched on. But more importantly, if you don't understand point A, where you are at the moment and why you want to move to point B, you're not really going to make any progress. Yeah, cool. So can you talk us through a little bit about the Aconcagua, kind of the first summit attempt? And are you happy to chat about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was 2018, January. I went out there with 2 friends of mine and another guy who was who kind of was part of the party. And yeah, we went out there with a goal of, basically trekking. Aconcagua is a non-technical mountain, i.e. you can hike to the top, but it is incredibly high altitude, just under 7,000 meters high. People do die on it. It's renowned really for its extreme weather in terms of cold and wind, which is 2 of the biggest challenges on it, in addition to the altitude as well. But we went out there we were out there for sort of 3.5 weeks. We were on the mountain for 12 days, completely green, thought we had the right gear, didn't. Marched into base camp like some kind of, test march heroes, all coming down with altitude sickness at base camp, feeling pretty rough. Savage weather we experienced at the time. After we'd been in base camp for a few days, this weather came in. It was an El Nino year. We got a massive dump of snow, really cold conditions. There's the altitude side effects, sickness were just getting worse the higher we went. And it was just a comedy of errors, really, of lack of experience, and also being undergunned on the clothing for the conditions. We took out 6,000 meter boots, which in theory should have been enough. But on summit day, from camp 3 to as high as I got, which was 150 meters from the top, the 6,000 meter boots on, within 2 hours, I couldn't even feel my feet. And having never been in that situation before, it's like, when do you actually turn around because of risk of frostbite and losing your toes? And, when does this become how long can you go before, this becomes an issue? We didn't have the answers. So, we were kind of going into it green. And ultimately that led to me getting, 150 meters from the top, but then really my health taking a real turn for the worse than I knew, through this gut feeling and this inner voice that kept telling me to turn around, that I had to turn around because I was losing control of my legs. I was almost losing control of my bowels. Things were going pretty bad pretty quickly. And I recognized that as one of the major symptoms or some of the major symptoms of potential cerebral edema, which is a swelling of the brain, which can be fatal. So anyway, managed to get down off the mountain after an amazing struggle. None of us summited. A guy had died at the top a few days previous from a heart attack. And yeah, just came away from it 7 kilos lighter in 12 days and licking my wounds, basically, disappointed not to get to the top. But then I kind of, as I said, spent a year recovering after that with the pain in my body and just trying to heal myself, basically. And then the year after that, which was the start of going into 2019, I just kind of had this kind of feeling that I was thinking about being ready to take on the challenge again. But I decided that I wanted to go out there and do it on my own, but with a group of elite Himalayan adventurers. So I went out there with Nimsdai and his crew from Elite Himalayan Adventures. He summited all 14 8,000 meter peaks last year to set a world record in just under 7 months, which was phenomenal. So I wanted to go out there with the main man and have another go. So I went out this time and prepared better. Spent time in Brighton University Extreme Altitude Chamber training in the month before I went out. Got an altitude tent at home, which I was sleeping in every night for a month, and just did way better prep. And so therefore my experience this time around, also helped by the weather, because the weather was completely different. Managed to summit on the 16th of Jan earlier this year.
Congratulations.
Thanks, mate.
Are you in a twisted way, you glad that you went through that experience on the first summit or first attempt? I mean, what did you learn? What were the lessons for you?
Well, the learning was firstly just was lack of preparation. should have done some altitude exposure before I went. Didn't, just thought, having never been to altitude, just had no idea. You just think, oh, I'm pretty strong, pretty fit, going to get out there. But it's a leveler. You can be the fittest person in the world up there, and if you can't handle altitude, it doesn't matter how fit you are. It's gonna hit with a heavy stick. So yeah, the prep was a big one. Upgrading my kit was another. So this time around, I took 8,000 meter boots out there, which the guys at Elite Himalayan Adventure stipulated, just in case the conditions are -50. When we went the first time, you've got to have boots that you can get to the top of Everest with in those kind of temperatures to avoid losing toes and so on. So upgraded the kit. And yeah, just thought that really it was going to be an easier acclimatization strategy, but as it happened, it was absolutely savage this time around, because the weather window was such that we spent a long time in base camp, and we just didn't do the acclimatization treks progressively higher and then coming down. I thought that the initial plan had outlined we were going to do. Instead, we spent ages in base camp, about 7 days. We did one acclimatization trek to Camp 1 and came down. A few more days in base camp, and then the weather window emerged, and it was like, right, we're going to go to Camp 1, spend a night. Camp 2, we're going to rest for a few hours. Then we're going to springboard and miss out Camp 3 and go straight for the summit in one massive push. So you were looking at going from 4,500 meters all the way up to just under 7 in the space of 36 hours. And I was fearful of that, because these trips cost a lot of money, and what I didn't want to do was go out there, fail again, and then have to go back another time. But as it happened, even though it was absolutely savage as hell, managed to summit and came down victorious. But the lessons that you learn, mate, is even just going to base camp and knowing what to expect in terms of the water supply there instantly gives you the shits. Everybody's got, to the toilet. It's proper hard. You're dreading having to go, and it's multiple times a day. The food quality is poor. The air is obviously thin. It's hardship. But knowing what to expect when you get out there is a massive advantage over those who've never been, because mentally you're prepared for that, and you know that's part of the deal. And if you've got that squared away, then anything over and above that, you can focus on dealing with that instead, because you've got your grassroots expectations there sorted.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds incredible. And I love the way you tell the story. And the fact that you've failed, come home, regrouped, gone back out there and summited, even though it was a hugely challenging summit. Aside, the plan obviously doesn't face contact with the enemy, but you had to adapt and then take that massive leap through, skipping through a camp. I mean,
it was huge. It was huge, mate. Yeah.
Limited understanding of high altitude. I've done Kilimanjaro 3 times, but that obviously is 1,000 meters lower, which is, respect.
Yeah, I mean, the guys who led who were the team leaders, they got a bit of criticism back in base camp from the acclimatization strategy, saying it was, possibly a little bit on the pushy side, possibly a little bit irresponsible. But the fact of the matter is everybody bar one person in our team summited on the 16th of January. And yes, people were exhausted at the top, including myself. But that is the nature of the beast. At 7,000 meters high, there's a reason they use Aconcagua as a good prep for the altitude of Everest, is because it is absolutely savage. And, all the prep in the world, unless you're a Sherpa, you're going to find it tough up there for the most part.
And it's so hard, I guess. It's so hard to balance when you're trying to organize that sort of expedition, and trying to balance with the fatigue that you get just from being there.
Yeah.
Versus the acclimatization of kind of bouncing up and down between camps. At some point you've just got to pull the plug and just go for it, haven't you?
It's all hard, mate. Even doing the acclimatization treks up and down, it's still exhausting. It helps you to get better and tolerate it easier, but it's still bloody hard work, and that's the thing, is there's no easy way to the top. One way or another, you're going to suffer. It's just how long the suffering is and how healthy you're going to be when you come back down, and that's the thing.
Yeah, that's an important factor. Why was that attractive to you? Why did you seek that out? More generally, why do you seek out hardship? Because I know you just got back from
Um,
the hills, haven't you?
yeah, I mean, I mean, I wasn't aware of Aconcagua until my mate Rob Blair at the Commando Temple.
Know him
He was
well.
the one who kind of put the plan together initially. But that experience with that, and then me also training to become a mountain leader. I recognised what the mountains gave me. I competed in the fan dance multiple times in the Brecon Beacons, and I recognised in overcoming those challenges and racing in the fan dance what sustained hardship can do. And I quite often say, endurance training like that, endurance challenges taught me more about strength than strength training ever did. And I've competed at national level and in powerlifting. And, if you really want to learn about strength and mental strength and resilience, then you're going to find it more in really hard, long, tough endurance type things where you suffer for multiple days or for hours on end, because you then find within yourself the kind of stuff that you're made of, your ability to process discomfort, your ability to have confidence that you can carry on, that you're not just going to, quit when it gets tough, or, the ability to clear your mind when you think you're going to quit and just be able to process that feeling and process it through so you can continue. That for me is where, true personal growth lies. And that's got massive carryover then into whatever you can do. Because if you've summited something like Aconcagua, where all of a sudden running over the fan dance and doing something in the Brecon Beacons doesn't quite seem as difficult, because your point of reference has completely changed. And so anything else beneath that then becomes relatively easy in comparison. And so your expectations shift on your own capabilities and what is hard and what you can tolerate.
Yeah, and I'm sure you do as well. We get asked about sort of things like health, strength, but also things like energy and resilience. And I think what you summed up there was the way you build resilience, isn't it? Really pushing beyond what you think is capable, keep challenging yourself,
Yeah.
seeking out those hardships, and suddenly, whatever your day-to-day life is, things become much easier, and suddenly you've got space to think about the next opportunity you want to do, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I think the thing with that, mate, is, this idea of mental resilience, it's not just about just becoming a hard bastard, it's more about the processes that happen when you start to doubt yourself, and your ability to let go of the self-doubt, let go of, detach yourself from the discomfort and relax more, rather than having a mindset of telling yourself to think in a different way. Because ultimately hardship tends to be, I think in my experience anyway, more of an in-body feeling. The brain processes the stuff, but when you're truly exhausted, it's well in your body, and it's being able to stay in your body and go, is it a problem right now? Well, no, it's not. I can carry on. Well, therefore, you can continue onwards. It's the ability to go deeper within yourself and process and reason away, rather than it just being push on, push on, push on. Because people tend to crumble when just trying harder and harder and harder works until it doesn't, until you break. So you have to find a way of being able to survive and relax when things are bad, rather than pushing harder. It's not really, it's difficult to explain. It's not really a push, it's more of a relax and come into ease, so that the tension that you're feeling reduces, and therefore you can continue to flow more rather than keep pushing under tension.
I think that's a really, really interesting point, and absolutely vital, because I think a lot of people kind of look at maybe guys like us, and I get comments about it with my past. But I look to guys like you and Rob as really pushing the boundaries, and as these kind of like these tough guys, whatever it might be that you're up to. But I think that's such an important point that you raised there, and it is a little bit nebulous and a little bit kind of like tricky to get your head around. But the problem, I think, is lots of people have the narrative of like, oh, they've been through X, Y, and Z, wherever it might be. They're just hard. They've hardened themselves. So therefore that they don't have those voices in their head. They don't have that self-doubt. They don't have to go through that process. It's not hard for them kind of chat. And what you summed up there is perfect, really, because you'll say, no, that it categorically isn't the case. You still, every time it is, but you've just got a little bit of a different mechanism about understanding what's going on. And you're going to allow that kind of that relaxation, understanding how to find a flow through the challenge ahead of yourself.
Ultimately, Nick, I think it's basically like anything. If you want to become really good at something, you have to do that thing a lot. And mental processes are a skill just as much as physical processes are. Now, over the years, I've done a heck of a lot of internal work on myself under the wing of a mentor. And so I understand myself for the most part, absolutely implicitly. And I understand that, in order to succeed in the things I want to do, quite often it's not necessarily a case of trying harder, but it's more about relaxing more and being able to just be still and let things emerge from a place of strong intent rather than trying to force things to happen at a pace that you think they should happen. Now, that just comes about through practice and skill. It's not something that, that you've either got or you haven't. Anybody can develop it. It's just having a commitment to, okay, well, being mentally stronger is going to serve me well in the things that I want to do. So therefore, I need to improve that skill of internal processing, internal reasoning, being able to let go of tension, being able to recognize tension, being able to think about what happens when pain manifests in the body and how to deal with that. All of those things are things that ultimately limit. And so therefore, if you become more skilled in dealing with that stuff, then your external expression of that becomes stronger through the physical output.
Yeah, I have to take a second to let that sink in, I think, for everyone listening. So, and it's so evident that is the case when you have these conversations. It really is, and it's almost to the detriment, I think, of our message is that notion that you just need to toughen up and kind of like face up, man up, whatever it might be.
Yeah, because that ultimately, mate, that idea doesn't necessarily help people, because it's like, if somebody inherently doesn't feel tough, no amount of us telling them toughen up is going to help them. Even if you run them ragged and say, this is for your mental toughness, beasting somebody who's not on board with that is not going to make them more mentally tough. It's going to teach them to absolutely hate exercise and hate you and hate that experience, so they never want to do it again. Instead, we have to, I think, as coaches, find ways of being able to almost reassure people that if you do X, Y, and Z, you can expect to see more of something else. And, let's face it, not everybody wants to be super tough. A lot of this stuff transfers into just our day-to-day lives and how we think about things, how we react to the situations, how do we react to how we feel about things like, the current situation we find ourselves in. How do we react when we feel like we've got no time in the day to be able to train? Well, can you do 30 seconds of swings? Probably, yes, you can. We'll start with that. If that's all you do, 30 seconds of swings, that's enough. For me as a coach, if that's what you've done today, that's one step closer to where I would, prefer to see you further down the line. You have to just strip it back into a package that somebody can get on board with without them thinking they have to live up to your expectations as a coach, or what you're doing, or what they've seen on your Instagram or whatever else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I reflect back to this time last year, when my baby was just been born, and I was absolutely exhausted. And for me, a workout was 2 minutes of kettlebell snatches.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it.
Yeah. But, mate, if you do 2 minutes a day, 7 days a week, you've got, 15 minutes there of training that ordinarily wouldn't happen. And if you do that 15 minutes of training every single week for a year, that's a whole host of training there that you've done without it really impacting on your day at all, but probably wouldn't have happened under normal circumstances. Well, that there, I say, is a great thing, because you've done something for yourself there that's going to help you move you forward. And if you do that a few years down the line, all of those 2 minutes add up. And I think that's what we need to look at as coaches, is a very long time frame of what have you done for most of the time, or more often than not, in the last 12 months. When you look at that, that's where real progress lies, because you can begin to then unpick where people fall short, but also show them ways and means of being able to do stuff that's really achievable, that they can get on board with, that actually doesn't have to take too much time at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so important. Okay. Let's switch for a little bit.
Okay, cool.
So tools and tactics, you know, I see you kind of like experimenting with different kind of weapons of fitness, whatever they might be. But you've got some go-to. So, you know, things like the kettlebell, the mace bell,
Yeah.
things that you've kind of progressed from maybe traditional styles into this kind of slightly newer way of different tools and mechanisms.
Yeah.
You know, what do you use? Why do you use what you use, and why do you think it's effective?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of my own training, I tend to do a lot of kettlebell work. That's something I've done from day dot, really, when I first re-qualified as a PT and started to work towards getting my own business off the ground. Was, you know, back in 2008, which was when I started my business. Kettlebells were relatively unheard of then in the UK. They were, you know, there was a few people using them, but hardly any. And I just saw that I was looking at the time for a tool that was something that was transportable, something that was different to set me apart from 90% of other personal trainers at the time, but moreover, something that was highly effective as a training tool and delivered the best bang for the buck results. And I found the kettlebell, or the kettlebell found me, and I never looked back once I started doing that. And since then, the kettlebell has formed the main basis of the training I've done, both with myself, but also my clients since then over time. Now, along the way, I've added additional things as well. So Bulgarian bags is another training tool that I absolutely love. In more recent times, the mace bell. And those are the main things I use the most, especially with the clients I work with, but also my own training. And then, you know, in recent times, you know, I like a strong cardiovascular element for myself. So that historically has been running in the past. That's formed a large part of training. In more recent times this year, particularly erg work on like the Concept 2 skier, Concept 2 bike, assault bike. And then, you know, a little bit of dumbbell work as well. But I spent a lot of time doing a lot of barbell work, Nick, from sort of 2000 and when was it? About 2002 to, no, it's a bit longer than that. Actually, it was about 6 years of barbell work from about 2000. I can't even remember, 2006 to 2011 when I was a competitive powerlifter. And, you know, I moved away from the barbell stuff then because I was probably the least functionally fit then that I ever remember as a competitive powerlifter. You know, I was great at bench, you know, not bad at squat, not bad at deadlift, but my overall fitness, my overall ability to do stuff was just, you know, shocking, really. And that's what led me into the kettlebell approach. Is now I'm very much what I consider myself to be a hybrid athlete. You know, I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so therefore I love the combination of the kettlebells, the maces, the bags for strength and conditioning work, and then also the importance of endurance, whether that's hiking, running, you know, erg work, whatever.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's interesting that you've been sort of with the kettlebell for so long. Really, I think 2008 was when I did my fitness qualifications as well. But yeah, and I think although you know it is much more prevalent, you know, from what I see you doing with it is, you know, and maybe you can talk a little bit around that is kind of what people are missing when it comes to kettlebell training. And because I mean, I don't know your experience, but you see everything going on online, don't you, in terms of people lifting different things in different ways, and some of it is like, yeah, maybe that's quite interesting. And so I've experimented some of the sort of speed work and then the sort of Mike Salemi stuff, but then you see the, you know, some of the mainstream, believe it or not, some of the mainstream brands out there, and you're just really not sure how they're lifting that bit of kit in that fashion. So what's your kind of ethos when it comes to the kettlebell? What do you think people should be?
Yeah, I mean, I did a number of kettlebell certifications over the years. You know, it was originally Optimal Life Fitness back in the day. And that was in sort of 2008. And they had a bit of a kind of, you know, semi-sport style approach, which worked for a number of years. But then I did the Strong First certification back in, I think it was 2006 or 7, I can't remember which. And for me, that was a game changer, because that moment when I did that certification over that weekend completely changed the way in which I coached kettlebells to my clients. The Strong First, for those who don't know, is a hardstyle based approach to kettlebell training. It uses principles of strength and tension as the foremost skills, the ability to generate tension and stability and to be body aware so that you can therefore maximize strength and conditioning output is the kind of model. And what I recognized was most people are really not that conscious of their bodies. They don't really know how to feel, how to generate tension, how to contract a muscle hard. They're not really into their bodies that way. Quite often people will just go through the motions of training that, they might be on a treadmill watching friggin' EastEnders. They're not in their body. They're not aware of what they're doing. They're not thinking about how they're moving. And I see the power of the kettlebell, not just in terms of strength and conditioning tool, but also as a massive opportunity to become incredibly self-aware and really learn the skills. And the kettlebell is a highly technical piece of kit to use if you do it right. It gives an opportunity for massive personal growth and self-awareness that has got huge carryover then into how we live our day-to-day lives and how we pick stuff up, carry stuff, operate, and all of that associated in and around that arena. So, I think with the kettlebell, for me, it was just a great way of being able to teach people the idea of strength and conditioning safely with a structured way of doing it so they can understand and feel where it is that they're heading and why it all pieces together, because the system that I learned through that was very kind of practical, progressive, and easy to understand.
And that's a tough cert to get, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I mean it's modified over the years, but when I did it, it was all double kettlebells, apart from the snatch and the get up and the single arm swing. It was double kettlebell swing, double press, double squats, double press, double clean, single arm snatch, Turkish get up. And they were, for me, that was with double 24s. And it was similar to the RKC cert, which was known as like the toughest kettlebell cert to pass. One of the things being that you had to do 100 snatches in less than 5 minutes with a 24 kilo kettlebell. Well, you can't, most people can't just rock up to a weekend and just do that. That takes a serious amount of training for that kind of kettlebell. And so it did, they prided themselves on trying to separate out the wheat from the chaff and getting the people who were really wanting to be a solid instructor and putting the work in so they understood what it takes to get to a level of, strong strength and conditioning through the certification process. And like I say, it's a fantastic certification game changer.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think there's ways and means to use different tools, isn't there?
There is, of course there is. Yeah. And for me, I've done some kettlebell sport in the past. It's a great modality of training. I just lean more towards that aspect of it. And, it relates well to a lot, the kind of clients that I work with, it relates well to their needs. If I was more interested in kettlebell sport, no doubt I'd have more kettlebell sport style clients. That isn't where my interest lies. It's where my interest lies is who I end up working with. And that's pretty much what I've observed within my business. So,
yeah. It's just natural, isn't it? Especially if you're carving out the business that you want, you know, and I think that's the beauty of and that I feel very fortunate to be in this space, is you get to work with people that you want to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you attract them in, mate, based upon the energy that you put out, and whatever your thing is that you're into, the people are going to see that, resonate with it, and be attracted to you, and that's what you attract in, and that's how you end up working for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. So what's kind of new and exciting for you in the fitness space, and what's the next challenge going to be?
Well, mate, I don't think there's anything new out there in the fitness space, really. You might get some gadget that comes out that's meant to overhaul and transform this, that, and the other. But really, in terms of, physicality, there's nothing really new out there. There's just different ways of doing the same kind of stuff. And so it takes a lot for me to get excited about anything that it has not already really been done. I can see merits in things that I kind of look around, but to be honest, I think, Nick, for the most part, and the people who we work with, is the basics done well will take you a bloody long way in your fitness and health career. And actually, you could do the basics for the rest of your life. So do we need to be being distracted by the latest bells and whistles thing? Possibly not. If it interests you, go and do it. Find out for yourself is what I say, But, how I coach people is one of helping people to move better helping people to become more body aware,
Mm.
doing the basics really, really well, and then just seeing what emerges from that space. But, there's no one training modality that's any better than the other. For a while, everything works, especially when you've got somebody who's done relatively little training in the past. So, you can overthink, I think, programs, especially as a beginner PT, trying to get the latest. How can I deliver the best possible session? Well, make it basic. Get them doing it effectively, communicate well with them, have fun while you're doing it. They're going to love that session rather than whether it's a 15-minute AMRAP of the most complex things you could ever throw together. That doesn't make for a good workout.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cool. So, but personally, what challenges are you gonna? Is it more mountains that you want to climb? What's kind of like got your ear at the moment, or are you just building the business?
Yeah, well, at the moment, so massive kind of output on the business. I've since this COVID thing happened, I had to shift my business way more online. Which I wanted to do. I just hadn't had the need to do it, but it forced my hand this year, which was actually a blessing in disguise. So yeah, just continuing to build the online stuff and when I say online stuff, I've got a MACE course that is out. I'm going to continue to put more educational packages together. I've got a MACE certification happening in 2021, which is exciting. That'll be the first UK-based certification to go out. For coaches and enthusiasts who want to learn the MACE and achieve a certification at the end, which means they can get insured on it. But in terms of my own, fitness-based goals, is at the moment loosely, it's more high altitude mountaineering for me. So next year, obviously situation depending, then Mount Elbrus in Russia is on the agenda. Potentially Mont Blanc. Nice to do those in the same year, but if not this year, then Mont Blanc next. And then the 5-year plan, not that I really have 5-year plans, but I've got a loose intention to get out to the Himalayas and have a stab at Manaslu, which is an 8,000 meter peak. And that for me is going to be one of the ultimate goals. But then, if I achieve that, who knows beyond that? I just never know. I like to see what emerges over time based upon where my interests go.
Well, you can put my name down for Elbrus. I'll definitely be up for that. It's something I've talked to my brother about. But Mont Blanc is by far the most beautiful mountain that I've had the fortune to summit. I wouldn't call myself a mountaineer by any stretch of the imagination, but no, that's cool. It's cool to hear. And the Mace Bell stuff is fascinating to me as well. And the progressing that new modality is really interesting. And I like the way that you've got quite a methodical approach to understanding a skill, learning it to an extremely high level, and then trying to educate people in it. I think that's that cycle. I did a podcast. I think it's one of the very first podcasts I did with a guy called Alex Nino, he's like the go-to handstand expert in London. Awesome bloke. Some of the things he can do is just blows your mind. And his kind of practitioner approach to everything that he did was exactly that cycle of kind of understanding it at a very granular level, and then bring it into your own practice deeply, and then trying to bring other people up to a similar standard. I think it's a really nice mindset to have, as opposed to kind of just going out there and just seeking to kind of like, I can do that, and move on to the next thing, wherever it might be in that regard. It's good to hear, man.
Thanks.
I mean, I'm sure I could chat to you for a lot longer, but I want to respect your time, Matt, and definitely I want to kind of bring you back on and dive into detail and maybe turn it into a kind of bit of a Q&A on the next episode and see how we get on. And you're only just down the road from me as well, so maybe at some point we can do face to face.
That'd be good.
God forbid, in this day and age. But yeah, I think so. I just want to acknowledge like the good work that you're doing and the level of integrity that I see coming through in the work that you do and the posts that you put out on social media. And as a all-round athlete, I think you've kind of really got your head screwed on in terms of understanding your own, not only your own body over the years that you've trained, but also the mindset required to actually coach effectively. You know, the bits you talked about there about mindset and resilience and the way it gels together, I think is massive, and it's a huge aspect of everything that we try and achieve as coaches. So I'll acknowledge you for that, Matt, and thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure, Nick. Thanks very much for inviting me.
No worries, dude. There we go. How did we find that one? Really interested in your feedback on that episode with Matt. I think what strikes me when communicating with Matt and we're having chats with him, firstly, is the depth of his knowledge when it comes to coaching and training, and also the kind of no-nonsense, gritty approach that I love and kind of gravitate towards, because there's a lot of fluff and noise out there in the space, and you can just tell this guy is direct, and that really resonates with me, and I think probably lots of you guys listening. Awesome. Thank you for listening all the way through. I really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, give us a review on whatever app you're listening to. That does make a massive difference, gets this podcast out to more and more people. Also, you can follow Matt at Coaching Shaw on Instagram. I think it's where he builds most of his creative content and does an amazing job. And obviously, you can find me on the socials at elemental_Nick. Great to have you on board. Share this with someone you care about, and I will see you on the next episode.